On today's episode, we're going to be finding out what the hell is going on with the Pacific Islands Heritage Marine National Monument in the U.S. in the Pacific Islands. This is something that has been unprecedented. It's been protected for over 10 years, and all of a sudden, on day one of his presidency, Donald Trump opened it up for fishing because he wanted the United States to be number one in fishing in the Pacific. What is that going to do to the protected area, to all the stuff that happened in the protected area when it was shut down? Do we even know if fish grew in numbers, in size during that protection? We need more science to do this, and Angelo Villagomez from the Center of American Progress is here to talk about why we need more science and monitoring during this time. And we're going to talk about the court case that actually shut down the opening of this Marine National Monument. We're going to talk about it on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Let's start the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin, and this is the podcast where you find out what's happening with the ocean, how you can speak up for the ocean, what you can do to live for a better ocean by taking action. On today's episode, we are going to be talking about the Pacific Islands Heritage Marine National Monument in the U.S. This has been something that has been around the news since day one of Donald Trump's presidency, where he erased the U.S. commitment to 30 by 30, the global goal to protecting 30% of land and sea by 2030. Not long after his administration turned its attention to the Pacific Islands Heritage Marine National Monument, one of the largest fully protected marine areas in the world, spanning over 1.3 square miles of protected area. For a decade, these waters had been off limits to commercial fishing, serving as a sanctuary for corals, pelagic fish, and countless migratory species. But on April 17, 2025, Trump issued a Proclamation 10918, declaring that commercial fishing in the monument's expansion area posed no risk to scientific or historical objects. This opened the door for fishing between 50 and 200 nautical miles around Wake Atoll, Johnston Atoll, and Jarvis Island, waters that had once been completely protected. The proclamation directed NOAA and the Western Pacific Fishery Management Council to rewrite the rules, weighing options from keeping protections in place to removing them entirely. It was the first day and only rollback of marine protection under Trump, and it sparked immediate lawsuits from conservation groups. Then, just 2 weeks ago, the court struck down Trump's proclamation on a technicality, reclosing the monument to fishing, at least for now. The case highlights how fragile these protections can be when created by presidential proclamation instead of legislation. And it raises larger concerns. What does this mean for the U.S. commitment to 30 by 30? How much power should presidents have to undo decades of conservation progress? And what happens to the fish, corals, and communities that depend on these waters? Today, we are going to explore the politics, science, and the future of marine protection in the Pacific Islands Heritage Marine National Monument by speaking to Angelo Villagomez, a good friend of the podcast, and myself, who's from the Center of American Progress in Washington, D.C. He's going to be talking about the U.S. monument. He's going to be talking about how important it is and why we need to find out more about just getting science data and understanding what has happened over the last 10 years with the expansion of the monument and how that's helped or maybe not helped fish in general for growing in number and size. And we're going to just discuss a lot of the things that are happening in the U.S. and how that could be a distraction because there's so much going on, and how it could be a distraction to making sure that this marine protected area stays closed. So we're going to talk all that in this episode. Here's the interview with Angelo Villagomez. Enjoy, and I will talk to you after. Hey, Angelo, welcome back to the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. Are you ready to talk about marine sanctuaries?
I am. It's been a hot minute since I saw you. I think the last time we talked, we were both in France together.
Yes.
At the UN Ocean Conference.
That's right. And we were actually jumping into the water.
That's right. We did not win.
No.
Because we were participating in the Manu, the International Manu competition, which is Manu is a Polynesian word of jumping into the ocean. It means bird, but it's a style of jumping in the ocean in New Zealand. And you and I are not from New Zealand.
No.
And you were the Canadian participant.
I
was the American participant. And we did not win.
We failed.
But it was a good time. Good time was had by us.
It was we're jumping off, like, it wasn't too high. You were much braver than the rest of us were by just jumping off that first cliff. Wasn't that high. Beautiful water, nice and refreshing. It was nice to do it at a conference where we get to have some fun as well, and it was great people. So that was a lot of fun. But, like, let's talk before we start this. the way you jump in, you got to go like butt first.
But first, yeah,
Like,
that's the biggest splash.
yeah,
So when I was growing up as a kid, I thought a cannonball
right.
was the best, right? So you sort of like you tuck in with your
Yeah,
hands, and then boom, you hit the water and splash. We've done it wrong our entire lives.
it's butt
The
first.
the best splash is achieved by putting your derriere into the water first, which is not that easy, right?
No.
Like you gotta jump in the air, so like there's you gotta get some lift and
Yep.
some distance, and then flip your legs out in front of you and
Yeah.
land butt
And
first.
not on your back because that would hurt even more.
You know,
You got to do
but
but so you got to like be pretty good. It takes some
yeah,
practice. I did not practice. I was not good. I
neither
did
did
one
I.
thing and I'm like I'm out. I got to go. But that was a lot of fun. But we're not here to talk about that. Although that was very fun and we could probably do an entire episode on that. We are here to talk about marine protected areas. In particular, a marine sanctuary called the Pacific Island Heritage Marine National Monument. Quite a title, but also it represents a lot. So, Angela, before we get started with that, can you just tell me, just remind the audience who you are and what you do?
So my name is Angelo. I live in Washington, D.C. I work for an organization called Center for American Progress, and I'm an ocean advocate. And I was actually at the designation, the very beginning of the Pacific Islands Heritage Marine National Monument.
That's cool.
I went to the White House, and I was an advocate for Mariana Trench Marine National Monument.
Right.
But President George W. Bush, in his last 2 weeks of office, designated three large protected areas out in the Pacific Ocean in U.S. waters, and I got to watch him sign the piece of paper that actually created this big protected area. And it is the U.S. Has a number of different islands out in the Pacific. Everyone's heard of Hawaii,
Mm-hmm.
but we also have Guam, the Northern Mariana Islands, American Samoa. But there's also this series of seven uninhabited islands, and they're collectively called the Pacific Remote Islands Area. Um, and it's like Wake Atoll, Jarvis, Palmyra, Kingman Atoll, and President Bush created a marine protected area, a very large marine protected area around all seven of these islands. They're not contiguous, and so it was like five different big squares out in the middle of the ocean.
Right.
Um, and then a few years later, we had a new president. Barack Obama was president, and he made three of those five big squares into giant circles.
Mm.
They initially went out from shore to 50 miles, and he extended them out to 200 miles.
Okay.
And then President Trump, Donald J. Trump, came into the White House, and he's threatened all of America's public lands and waters. He said we're going to drill, baby, drill.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to mine the deep sea. And the first action that he took against public lands and waters was to open up a big chunk of this protected area to fishing. When Obama expanded it, he expanded it to 1.3 million square kilometers,
Mm-hmm.
and Trump opened up about a million of that to fishing.
So more than
So
half,
this was yeah, well, more than like you
like
got make me do
60%,
math. Yeah, no, it's like 80%. It's like
80%.
1 million out of 1.3. So
Oh,
like
1.3. Sorry, I thought I
70,
was talking about 1.8.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
70, 80,
yeah,
70, 80%.
yeah.
So that was back in April, and the government office in Hawaii, NOAA, they issued a letter to all the fishermen, permit holders, and said you can now fish in this protected area. And almost immediately, a whole bunch of boats, like 10 or 20, went into the protected area. And you can go to globalfishingwatch.com, and you can put in the right parameters, zoom in, find the right dates, and you can see those fishing vessels.
Yeah.
And they're in there, and they're catching tuna. They're based in Hawaii, going down to the protected area, which is a couple thousand, like maybe 1,000 miles away, and then going back up to Hawaii and offloading their fish. The conservation community was not happy about this,
Right.
and the Trump administration was sued by several groups in Hawaii. The lawsuit was filed by Earth Justice, which is a great organization. Uh, and about 2 weeks ago, um, the courts decided that the Trump administration had broken the law when they used that letter to open this area up to fishing, because America is still a country of laws, and we have a fisheries law called Magnuson-Stevens, and the Trump administration had not followed the letter of the law, so the judge closed the area to fishing again. So it was opened up in April, shut down a couple of weeks ago, and now the fishing interests are trying to get that process going. That
Mm.
that legal government process that could open this area to fishing, and we're seeing that happening in real time.
That's a lot that happened in such a short time. Where President Donald Trump takes away or opens it up for fishing. So what's the reasoning that he used behind opening it up? Is it more of like the drill baby bill? We're going to fish everything. We want to be the biggest fisheries in a country in
Yeah,
the
I mean
Pacific.
that's ultimately what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Is that we're going to have energy dominance, we're going to have
Right.
fisheries dominance, we're going to fish everywhere, we're going to have the greatest economy, which it's very short sighted. The United States has had protected lands and waters for the last 150 years when our first national parks were protected,
Mm-hmm.
and this country can absolutely have the best managed fisheries in the world and the best network of protected areas. And the goals of sustainable fishing and of habitat management or habitat protection are not the same. When you are advocating for sustainable fishing, what your ultimate goal is to, it's much more complicated than this.
Yeah.
But you want to get to a place where you have sustainable fishing,
Yeah.
where the number of fish being taken out are being replaced every year, so that you have a steady catch, and fishermen can have jobs, and there's fish on people's plates. But the goals of conservation are often not the same.
Mm.
They're sustainable fishing is not a net zero, or it's not a um, environmentally neutral activity.
Right.
There still are outcomes to it. There's bycatch.
Yep.
The fish do die.
Mm-hmm.
So there's changes in the fisheries assemblage. Usually you'll see maybe sometimes the fish populations will go down, but sometimes the fishes of the sizes will
Mm-hmm.
be smaller. And again, this is different depending on the stock. So
Of
it's
course.
you
Yeah.
can't just paint with a broad brush for everything.
Right.
But we can have fisheries and protected areas, and for the last 20 years, it's worked. The way the United States manages its tuna fisheries in the Pacific, um, for the boats in Hawaii is with a quota.
Mm-hmm.
And that quota was, I think, 3,500 tons. It was recently increased to 7,000 tons.
Just this
And
year?
it's not, I think last year or the
Last
year
year. Okay.
before, it was increased, it doubled.
Okay.
Um, they've never had an issue reaching the quota.
Right.
It's not like there's fish that are being left uncaught.
Right.
It's the the fleet has operated and is very successful,
Yeah.
and we've had these protected areas at the same time.
Right. So with it, the idea is saying, hey, look, the catch per unit effort hasn't really changed. They're able to meet their quota. They're able even to double it, and the fisheries population so far, the tuna population, is fine because it's well managed, because there's marine protected areas, because of this. We're looking at what? How many years? When was it designated? 2007?
It was designated in '09,
Oh, nine.
and then
Okay.
it was expanded in '15. So
Right.
it's been
So
the
quite a
area
long
that was
time.
open. The area that's opened has been closed for like a decade.
Yeah.
Um, And I'm glad you asked that question, because one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is because this area had been closed to fishing for 10 years,
Yeah.
and then it was opened from April to August, and fish were caught. And I want to see that data,
Yeah. For sure.
because it doesn't have to be me, but I want, like, scientists who I trust to see that data.
Yeah.
And I could actually, this could be a great collaboration between MPA scientists and fisheries
Yep.
scientists, because what what the fisheries folks are saying is that these protected areas have had no benefit to the fishery. They've been a complete waste of time. They've harmed the fishermen. But what the MPA scientists say is that they've actually led to spillover effects.
Mm-hmm.
That in the way that's been measured with studies in the past has been fishermen are fishing the line.
Yeah. Yeah, right on
And
the
they're
border.
saying by fishing the line, that's evidence
Hmm.
that the fishermen know that there's more fish inside the protected area. And fishermen are brilliant, smart people. They
Yeah.
dedicate their entire lives to catching fish. They know how to catch fish. They know the best ways to catch fish. They know how to catch it as fast as possible, so that they can make as much money as possible. So, like when fishermen are going to the borders of marine protected areas, it's because they know something.
Yeah.
Like it's not random.
Yeah.
But with this fisheries data that we have for these couple of months, like, can we look at the catch per unit effort? How many hooks were dropped in the water and how many fish were on the line, and how long did they soak those hooks in the water
Hmm.
to catch those fish? I think that's actually pretty easy to capture. And the NOAA used to put all that data on their website, but the last couple of years it hasn't been there. I'd also be interested in looking at the sizes of the fish. That may be a little bit more difficult, but when those fish are offloaded in Hawaii, and you can actually go to this port, it's like the coolest thing in the world. It's one of the oldest, biggest ports for fish in the United States. And as the fish come off the boat, every single one of them gets a barcode.
Hmm.
So they have some of the like this amazing data on like literally individual fish for going back to like
And with
decades.
that, they'll get like size and length
Yeah,
and all
yeah,
that.
all
Like,
this where
yeah.
where it was caught,
Yeah.
incredible data, and then each one of those fish gets auctioned off, and then it gets sent to
Yep.
Japan, it gets sent to the mainland, it gets eaten in Hawaii,
Yep.
whatnot. Um, one reason that each of those fish get a barcode, by the way, is because they're each fish is about as valuable as an iPhone.
Yeah. Yeah. They're
Like
like thousands.
these
Yeah.
these these big tuna that go for $1,000.
Hmm.
The most high quality fish are going for real high. The bycatch is going for a lot less.
Hmm.
And then like this could actually be a really important moment for understanding marine protected areas with highly migratory species, right?
Yeah.
Um, and there's the UN General Assembly is happening in September, and there's hope that enough countries will ratify this high seas agreement,
Hmm.
and there's going to be this push for marine protected areas on the high seas.
Yep.
And this is fisheries data. This is not modeling. This
Yeah.
is not
This is
tracking fishing
actual
vessels.
data.
This is I have the number of fish that were caught. I
Yeah.
know where it was caught. I know how big they are. Um, Will this prove that this MPA has worked? It's been 10 years.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll give you this. Like on the flip side, what if we're wrong?
Hmm.
That's also important. If there's been no change in the catch per unit effort, if there's been no change in the size of the fish, has this marine protected area actually been effective?
I mean, that's the big question, and that's what science is for, right? It's
Yeah.
to prove that whether it is or not, has it been effective? Basically, if this fish have grown on average, they're bigger, they're longer, they weigh more, ideally because they haven't been touched in 10 years, so they've had a population growth, and that's the beauty about fish is that you can see that difference pretty quickly. And we've seen that in other MPAs. This one would be probably the first in the Pacific where we have this kind of long-term study. Did they have information on that? Like, because NOAA has always been good with information and sharing information. Did they have information on those fish before this MPA went in?
Before fishing, yeah, there is, yeah, it used to all be online. I don't know if it still is.
Right. But the
But
data
this,
is there
this
somewhere.
Yeah, this part of the Pacific is called the Pacific Remote Islands Area.
Yeah.
And then the long line data that was online, it used to be broken up. There's the main Hawaiian Islands, there's the Northwest Hawaiian Islands, there's the Pacific Remote Islands Area, and then there's the high seas.
Right.
And so it's really interesting to go into that data and and see the ebb and flow of what are they catching, how many sharks are they catching, what's the
Yeah.
bycatch.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure there's 20, 30 years of that data that one could look at. So yeah, it's really incredible. You can look
Yeah.
at the fisheries data before. There's no fisheries data while it's protected, but
Right.
then we've got these couple of months.
Yeah.
And again, it's
It's
a
still a
small
small chunk.
snapshot.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
It's there's these fish may be seasonal.
Hmm.
What was the water temperature, or is it an El Nino year? Like there's a lot of
Yeah.
variables there, um, but there's something.
Yeah.
Uh, there's also some social science that could be done. Before the opening, there were a lot of claims that there would be social and health benefits for American Samoa. There's a cannery there. And one of the arguments for opening it is that opening up these areas to fishing would support the American Samoan economy and
Yeah.
the community.
Yeah.
And I'm not a social scientist,
Right.
but there are social scientists who may have ideas on how do we study this? Can
Mm-hmm.
we do interviews? Can we look at some of the economic data? When it was opened, was more fish delivered to the cannery?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and again, complicated.
Yeah.
There's these tariffs you may have heard of in the
Yeah. I
news.
haven't heard. Yeah. Not
Uh,
much about it. Yeah. Yeah.
and it's possible that these tariffs are more influential than like the actual fishing.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm not an economist, but
Mm-hmm.
there are people who can study this. But I recently had a short piece appear in Nature, the Journal of Nature.
By the way,
Uh,
congratulations. That's huge. Like
yeah, thanks, man.
that's a big paper. Like that's awesome.
Um, I collaborated with two of the MPA guide scientists, Dr. Kirsten and Dr. Jenna, and then Dr. Steven, who's one of my collaborators on many projects.
Right.
He's from Saipan.
Yeah.
He's native Hawaiian, and he's now a professor at Cornell.
Amazing.
Um, and that was basically just our claim. Is like, hey, we're scientists. Let's go
Yeah.
science.
Yeah.
Um,
Now with this, like, who do you like? Normally, it'd be NOAA that would gather this data, right? And they would put out technical reports and so forth, and they would look at that. Um, so I guess the first question is: Has there been have researchers been allowed in there to look at the stock while it was closed down? Because sometimes they're allowed and sometimes they're not.
yeah, no, there was there has been some research fishing. And I like even this year there was a permit that was submitted to do some research fishing inside the protected area. So there is some stuff out there.
Yeah,
I
just to
don't know
look
how
at that
public
size
people
as
are.
it's kind of grown over that
Yeah.
10 years, or if they've grown over that 10 years. The other question is like, since NOAA normally does this, is there a worry that like has the government ever said that they're going to look at this data, like the government now, like that's in power now,
So
the
I mean, the short
administration?
answer is like we're in trouble. Uh, Something like 1 in 4 NOAA employees who worked there in January no longer work for the agency.
Right,
And then with the Doge cuts, there have just been cuts all across the agency. And I have numerous friends and colleagues who are out of work, who
right.
are not
Yeah,
who
it's
are, who are no
unfortunate.
longer serving our government.
Hmm.
So, um, I think this is important. I
Yeah.
think this is I think this is globally important. So, trying to call attention to it. Um, the government has so much money. The U.S. government budget last year was like $6 billion.
Hmm.
In philanthropy, just sorry, $6 trillion
Trillion. I was
dollars.
about to
I just,
say
I
billion's a
just,
little
I
short.
just had a Doctor Evil moment
A
right
billion,
there.
I'll be like, hmm.
$6 1 billion, $6 trillion. NOAA, the government has more money than philanthropy, so philanthropy cannot back end all of this.
Right.
But I think that uh, there could be some discrete pieces that we could look at. And one of those discrete pieces that I would want to say is how does that fisheries data compare to uh, now? Because like science is happening in real time. It's closed again. It's probably going to be opened again, right?
Yeah, we'll
So
talk about that in just a sec. Of
even
like,
if we get the get the plan in place, like we
yeah.
still need to study the future. And then I also think this socioeconomic stuff needs to be better understood,
Hmm.
because uh, this is still a very controversial protected area.
Hmm.
There are some folks who would like to see it enlarged. There are some people who are kind of happy with what it is and want to
Hmm.
see the management be put in place. People have very strong feelings about this. And there's been some social science work around the Mariana Trench Monument.
Yeah.
There's been a lot around the Papahanaumokuakea Monument up in Hawaii. But I think there's opportunities for social scientists to study this. And it's complicated because, this is, it kind of appears between Hawaii, Marianas, Micronesia, American Samoa, and it's a public trust.
Hmm.
It's not owned by any one group of Americans. It's owned by all of the Americans
Hmm.
in the entire country. and I just think there could be some greater understanding that scientists could bring to what's going on, to make recommendations on how we move into the future.
Yeah, I agree. I think I mean, it'd be a study of a lifetime, really, looking at that size of an area closed down for 10 years, being able to study it, whether it be a collaboration of academics, philanthropists, government, even for the government, I would imagine they would like to see if this thing works or not. Just from a point of view of where is the best way forward? If you want to be the top fishing nation in the Pacific, wouldn't it be good to have great fish that's available year after year after year instead of having trouble later on after your catch per unit effort goes down, trying to catch these fish. So obviously that's a big deal. Let's talk about, I'd like to talk a little bit about, and we've talked about this before when you've been on the podcast, but I want to reiterate this. There's been when we go into the designation of these marine sanctuaries, especially in the Pacific area, Pacific Ocean for the U.S., it seems to always be designated by a president. So George W. Bush, you had Barack Obama, even the changes to it has been done by Donald Trump, and it seems like it can just change on the whim. It doesn't seem like it's a good long-term plan. Like, you would think normally presidents would really, like, at the end of the George Bush era, he wasn't very environmentally focused, but my understanding is that his wife really enjoyed the ocean, really enjoyed protection of environment. So that was the influence there. And that was sort of like his legacy at the end of his second term, to be able to do that. Barack Obama, did he do it in his first term or second term?
Second term,
Second
middle of a
term.
second term.
So again, like, it seems like more of a, I'm going to leave this legacy of environmental protection, and see where that goes. It seems like now it's just more of a, we want the U.S. to be the best at everything, and fisheries is going to be another thing. But presidents can kind of go back and forth on whether they want to either expand it, can keep it the same, or take away some protections. That leaves these marine sanctuaries, plus the people that benefit from these marine sanctuaries, vulnerable to changes. Is there a way that the laws can be more stringent of being changed?
So I wish I could say it was unprecedented that a president would roll back another president's protected areas. But this happened before, under the first Trump administration.
Right.
And the United States is, and I'm going to try to say this as nice as I can, the United States is in a transition moment, where the future of the United States stands on a precipice of, like, we're going to kind of a dark place. And this relates to our public lands and waters. So for the last 100 years, and the law that you're talking about that the president uses to protect lands and waters, and the Grand Canyon was protected with this law, and many other national monuments and national parks began with this Antiquities Act designation. And for most of history, presidents did not overturn things that other presidents had recognized.
Right.
And these lands, initially some of them were just protected as scenic landscapes, so that Ansel Adams could go and take a picture of the Grand Canyon, of these beautiful places. But in the last century, the reason for protecting lands and waters evolved. Like, some of our lands protect people, or remember people.
Yeah.
Some of them, Cesar Chavez, right?
Yep.
Cesar Chavez, the farm workers movement.
Mm-hmm.
Civil rights monuments protect, they remember, these are public lands that remember the civil rights movement. And out in the Pacific, indigenous culture has been a big part of these monument designations. So presidents kind of accepted that, we were protecting for scenic landscapes, we were protecting for biodiversity conservation, we were protecting to remember important people, important ideas, important places, important moments in our history. And Trump is kind of the first person to come along and say, no, we're not going to remember that. And he's doing it on public lands and waters, but he's also doing it at the Smithsonian, and he's doing it on government websites. Like, one of the first things, the New York Times has this incredible article where they identify 200 words that the Trump administration is scrubbing from websites, and it's things like innocuous words like woman,
Hmm.
uh, black,
Wow.
like just
Yeah.
completely erasing the history, gay,
Yeah.
erasing these concepts from like the world, right?
Yeah.
And so it's playing out in our museums, it's playing out in our government websites, it's playing out in the way government manages itself, but it's also playing out in our public lands and
Hmm.
waters. And we thought that our norms would protect us. We thought because it was always done that way, it won't ever happen in the future. And Bill Maher has this great bit that he's done a couple of times about that movie about the donkey that kicks field goals.
Right.
And because there's no rule that you can't have a donkey on your football team, the team went on having the donkey on the
Yeah.
football team, and
Yeah.
The Air Bud
Air
movies are
Bud.
kind of like the same thing.
Yeah.
There's no rule that the dog can't play basketball, and that's kind of where we are with Trump. Is like he is just rolling back these things. There's no rule that you can't have the National Guard overthrow Washington D.C.
Yeah.
Yet on my commute home, every metro station is full of National Guard troops.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's just doing it
And
because even though there's no rule to say that you can or cannot, he's just doing it because that's so the
so
same thing with the protected area.
So like, what can we can fight back? We can ridicule them, and this is shown to actually to work a little bit. A couple weeks ago, the Smithsonian announced a change at one of their exhibits about impeachment, and public uproar, ridicule, and within 48 hours, that thing was back.
Hmm.
And it was the same thing. They erased some stuff about Jackie Robinson, the great baseball player
Yep.
who was the first black guy to play Major League Baseball. They erased some of the stuff about his military service on one of the Pentagon websites or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, ridicule in 24 hours,
It's
it
back.
was back. So even though he's doing this stuff and we think he's taking his cues from industry, he still wants to be popular.
Mm-hmm.
And he's there is still right and wrong.
Yeah.
And So we fight in the courts. And that's how this first battle was fought in the courts.
Yeah.
Earth Justice was able to get that judge to agree with them, and they reclosed the fishing. But we also will fight in the court of public opinion,
Yeah. Yeah.
and eventually we'll fight at the ballot box
Yeah.
because we need if we want to have ocean conservation, we need to elect people who support ocean
Yeah.
conservation.
Yeah. No doubt. Now, I want to talk about the reasoning why the court shut this down, like the opening of this National Marine Sanctuary. So it's open for a few months. People are fishing, having a great time fishing, all that kind of stuff. Seems like it's really great. A lot of people that were not in ocean conservation saw the announcement that it was opened up. They'd have an uproar. Some people forgot to talk, not talking about it as much because there's so much going on. And then all of a sudden we get this court ruling saying, hey, this actually doesn't follow the Magnuson-Stevens Act. We're just going to shut it back down because, there's certain things that the council just says like or that the council hasn't met. It's like, can you talk about what was the reasoning behind the shutting it down again? Like, why was it
Well,
illegal for Trump to do that?
Protect it again.
To protect again. Yeah, shut it
to
down to
close it
protect it
down
again.
efficient.
Yeah, yeah,
Because they're incompetent, and they honestly they lost on a technicality, and they thought that they could take a shortcut. They thought that they could ignore the law. Um,
this is the
there's a
government said
or
that.
the
Yeah,
federal
the
government,
federal
the
government.
Trump administration. If you watch that TV show Parks and Recreation, there was an episode where Ron Swanson wanted to have a barbecue in a park,
Yeah,
and he just said, "I've got a permit right here," and it said, "I'm the parks director. I can do what I want." And that's kind of what they thought. They thought,
yeah,
"Oh, we're in charge. We can do whatever we want."
yeah,
But we're a nation of laws,
yeah.
so they have to follow the law.
Right.
And so they kind of lost on a technicality, which means this is not a permanent win. This is a temporary win where they have to follow the law, which means there's going to be a public comment period, which means so the next battle is we flood the government with comments.
Right.
And this is unpopular. People support the protected areas, like
Yeah.
national parks, national marine
Especially in the U.S.,
sanctuaries.
everybody
It's
says
called,
that's a
it's
huge
the
thing.
best idea America ever had. People
Yeah.
love our public areas. So this stuff is incredibly unpopular, and it's really just he's selling stuff off to the highest bidder, which in this case is fishing interests, but he's doing the same thing all across the country for oil companies and for
Hmm.
mining companies. Um,
So
and
I,
that's just
I
kind of where we are.
I think it's interesting that, like, is there not a law? Is there a marine protected area law? Like, is there a law that
Yeah, so
Congress
that's
or the Senate
um,
can put in?
yeah. The NASA, or sorry, NASA, NOAA is this amazing agency that has satellites and billions of dollars, and they can predict hurricanes and collect data for climate
Hmm.
change. But NOAA is within the Department of Commerce,
Right.
and
Which is bizarre in itself.
yeah,
Yeah.
part of that
It's been for
is
a
just
while.
a vestige of how the United States has been around and been managed over the years. Um, but sustainable fishing with with NOAA fisheries is sort of the driving worldview of why our oceans exist. And there's basically there's a couple other tools out there, but monuments and sanctuaries, uh, marine national monuments designated with the Antiquities Act, and then national marine sanctuaries designated with the Sanctuaries Act make up most of the acreage of our protected areas. We also have the estuarian. It's a
Right.
hard word to say. The estuarian reserves. There's also a number of national wildlife refuges that protect the ocean, like Buck Island National Wildlife Refuge in the Virgin Islands. So there's a couple of different tools out there, but all of these different tools were created by different laws, and they have honestly like somewhat different personalities,
Hmm.
and different goals and different reasons for existing or how they manage the ocean. Um, and these are relatively new. So where our national parks, Yellowstone, have been around since the late 1800s, early 1900s is when a lot of our lands were protected. Some of our big marine protected areas were only designated since like the 1960s, are some of the oldest ones. And in fact, the Sanctuaries Act was designated in response to oil spills. So in California, so the threat that act tends to focus on is oil drilling, so like the sea floor,
Hmm.
and that's why the Chumash National Marine Heritage, the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary that was designated last year by Biden, actually doesn't address fishing.
Right.
It mainly deals with the Chumash culture,
Yeah.
and involving indigenous peoples in the protected area, but it also has restrictions on oil exploration,
Mm.
which is an important threat that needs
Absolutely.
to be addressed.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
Um, but there is this long-standing conflict between the Antiquities Act fishing rules and the Magnuson-Stevens Act fishing rules because they have different purposes. We talked about this at the beginning of our chat here. Is so that the marine monuments are designated to protect artifacts,
Yeah.
and in this case, the artifact is the ecosystem.
Yes.
And so it's meant to protect habitat fully,
Hmm.
in perpetuity. So it says there's for the most part there's no fishing. In reality, there is recreational fishing. There is some cultural fishing, and there's also what is called non-commercial fishing. Um, uh, so yeah, the bigger problem is that the United States doesn't necessarily have the tools to create what other countries call marine protected areas.
Hmm.
We have monuments and sanctuaries.
Yeah.
And there's even like to be a nerd, like there are some people who might argue that these national marine sanctuaries aren't marine protected areas because they don't do enough.
Right. Because they're only
And
for
like
one specific thing, or
yeah, and
yeah.
I don't want to dive into that. Like I think this you've heard me talk about the strengths and weaknesses of 30 by 30 and the effort to protect 30% of the ocean. And this is some of the reality of like
Hmm.
what does 30 by 30 mean on the ocean?
Hmm.
There's on land it's two-dimensional, but on in the ocean it's three-dimensional,
Right.
and how do we manage that? Also fish swim, so how do we
Yeah.
manage that,
You
and
can't
not
keep
only
them in one boundary.
yeah, how do we measure that?
Yeah.
And so I think some of these borders that we draw, it's we're doing what we can, managing it with the tools that we have available. Um, but managing the ocean is much more complicated than just saying 30% of the ocean is a marine protected area. And even getting to that 30%, you also have to ask the question of how did we get there? What was the process that we went through? And then who were the people that were involved in going through that process?
And I think there's also something to say too, like, you and I have been watching marine. You've been involved in the designation of marine protected areas of all sorts from all over the world. I've been watching and I studied it in university and so forth. And there's something to be said about even a marine protected area first being designated may not have all the protections it needs to fully protect that area, but then you can build on it as it grows. And as you know, the first step is to get it designated. Obviously not, you don't want a paper park where nothing is enforced and nothing is managed, but even if you get one thing managed, hopefully later on you can increase the size like this one was done, or you can increase the amount of protections, or you can designate certain areas like a bit like the multi-management style that the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park has, and maybe install that and have like certain protections in certain areas as you discover more of that area and you research more of that area and how beneficial it is and where to pinpoint spawning areas or nursery areas and so forth of specific fish stocks. There's something to be said about just establishing it and building upon that. It may not be perfect, but we know in this world nothing's going to be perfect when you first start it off, and it takes a long time and a lot of effort to designate an MPA, notwithstanding any kind of difficulty in getting certain things protected and certain things not. It's a long-term goal to be able to do this. For you have a good pulse on what these MPAs, that you've been involved in have to do with, people who live around these areas, live on these islands and benefit from the benefits of these spill effects, notwithstanding like fully understanding what the MPA for the last 10 years or the expansion has done for fish and size and things like that. And I know we talked a little bit about the social implications, but how important is it to a lot of people who live out in those islands are indigenous? How important is it for the indigenous people for these protections to happen and to be designated? You mentioned how a lot of times it was to protect also indigenous culture and important for indigenous people. How important is it for this area to be closed, and then what are the effects of that when it's open?
I mean, no community is a monolith, and the opinions that people on islands have, whether they're indigenous or non-indigenous, are as variable as the opinions that we have uh, in Toronto or in Washington D.C. So you can't speak to what do people what do all people think.
Mm-hmm.
But when we talk about what is success? What is conservation success? And are these protected areas successful?
Yeah.
I think from the NGO perspective and from the science perspective, the definition of success for a very long time has been the area that is protected, the
Mm-hmm.
square kilometers that get protected. And so the United States adds up the number of square kilometers, but actually miles because we don't use kilometers down here. And they say, this is our percentage, and that's what the success is. But it can be different when you're living on the island, right? So for most people, it's like, are there fish on my a healthy ocean means there's a fish on my plate,
Right.
and that's the outcome that they want. But some of the stuff that I would like to see redefine success in marine conservation is who has those jobs. So there are so many jobs for the ocean for this conservation world, right? So there's the scientist,
Yep.
there's the administrator,
Mm-hmm.
there's the person who washes or who sweeps the floors in the
Mm-hmm.
university. And are those jobs in Washington State or are they on Guam?
Right.
Where did that money go? So there's the science, there's the conservation, there's the advocate world. So are people living in Washington D.C. and then flying to the islands to make these conservation
Yeah.
decisions and how much are they getting paid? Or are the people on the islands having those jobs?
Yeah.
For the management, are the managers from the islands or are they um, and this is the United States, right? So within the context of the United States, are they staffers from say New York?
Hmm.
And I don't think anybody that's from New York with working on the islands who come to the islands to work, and some of this can be complicated because those job descriptions get written in Hawaii or they get written in
Yeah.
Washington D.C. And you ask the question: is it better to find a local person in that job, even if they haven't taken zoology yet?
Hmm.
Uh, right? Because that job description says like you have to have taken zoology.
Yeah.
And do they even still teach zoology, or is it called something else in these days? Um, and then there's the fisheries benefits. There's the tourism benefits. So it's actually much larger. And whether if you're a tourist operator or you're an NGO or you're a government or you're a scientist, there's different ways that you even within those different silos that you would define success.
Hmm.
Um, but those we need social scientists to help us understand that.
Yeah.
Um, and that doesn't get communicated, and that doesn't get to be part of how we define conservation success. Um, we also don't have the processes that were gone through, right? So yes, there was a public comment period, but were the borders drawn with local input, or
Hmm.
did somebody in DC draw the borders, send it to the island, and say comment on this?
Yeah.
Even things like to make the decision for a public comment period, was that decision based on the island, or was that decision based in Washington D.C.?
Yeah.
And I don't see
You okay?
my wife is her phone is ringing.
I didn't hear it.
So that just one of the joys of live interviews. So you don't need to cut that. I did not have a stroke. It was just my wife's phone started ringing, and I didn't want it. I didn't know if you could hear it.
Yeah, yeah. I heard a
Maybe
little bit from behind. Looked like a song
maybe
going
you
on.
didn't, but I like from where I'm sitting, it was really loud, and my assumption was that nobody could hear it. But that's what happened.
It got you
Um,
distracted.
yeah, uh, yeah. But to bring it back to your question of are people supportive of these kind of things, is like the answer is it's complicated.
Yeah, yeah.
As it's
Depends on what the success rate is, like what the
there's the
definition
same
is.
kinds of interest. It's our society is just as complicated.
Hmm.
But then, like, the other thing to understand about these island societies is that there's an intimacy when you live there.
Hmm.
And when people come from the outside, you don't get that. You don't get to understand that intimacy
Mm.
of. I've lived here my entire life. The people who were in this society were my classmates when I was a kid. We are tight knit. Even if we have a fight right now,
Hmm.
that fight has to happen in a way so that next week we can talk about something else.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
or it's my in-law, you know.
yeah.
Um, and sometimes the timelines that are on islands
Hmm.
do not go. They're not on the same timelines as NGOs.
Yeah,
Okay, right. So the NGO. Their fiscal year ends in June, so they got to spend this money by June. Uh, but maybe it's election season.
yeah.
And elections are incredibly important because it's actually pretty easy to make decisions and like ram things through on an island. But are they going to be there for the long term?
Right.
And so this takes time.
Yeah.
I live in Washington D.C., but I still talk to people back at home. I'm still plugged into the community. There's other members. We're an ecosystem of advocates. We've got DZ people, we've got diaspora, we've got people at home. But I've been doing it for 20 years,
Hmm.
and that's what this conservation takes place. And so,
Yeah.
uh, to bring it back to the initial discussion, this moment where this yo-yo conservation that we're experiencing, this back and
Hmm.
forth of it's open to fishing, it's closed to fishing. In a couple of months, it's going to be open to fishing,
Right.
and then there's going to be another lawsuit, and it's going to be closed to fishing. Um, Real people are dealing with this, right? And
Yeah.
and also it's very emotional too. Like a
Yep.
lot of our identities are tied into this, and to have that back and forth. There's money involved. Like we talked about the fish being worth $1,000. Those boats, they want to catch the fish. They want
For
to
sure.
go.
Yeah.
They want to go get those iPhones out,
Yep.
and then sell them and make money.
Yeah.
Um, so this is why we need long-term committed people living in these islands who can participate in these actions over the long term. And back to the idea of who gets the benefits. A lot of times, those jobs just aren't with the people in the islands.
Yeah.
They're for people in the mainland.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is, like you said, it's very complicated when we think about it, and it almost requires its own study to be able to kind of, you know, like untie all the different lines that of the benefits and the successes. So like, finishing up this conversation, to wrap it up, the big idea here, now that it's closed, might open up again. There's definitely a need to get more data to increase the
We got to.
monitoring.
We have to study the shit out of this. We have,
Yeah,
we have to science the shit out of this, and
yeah.
we need fishery science, we need MPA science, and we need social science.
And
And
where do you want that to come from?
um, I think the fishery scientists can come out of Hawaii,
Right.
but I'd love a lot of this comes down to resources. But I think there are people in American Samoa and in the territories who could help lead this social science to help us ask the right questions
Hmm.
and understand how is this affecting the community.
Yeah.
And often, we're indigenous communities, and oftentimes indigenous communities get studied, and then the studies don't have the context or deep understanding
Yes.
of that intimacy of our societies. I've like read lots of books about my own community from outsiders or studies from outsiders, and it just feels off.
Yeah.
Like somebody says the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Like when an American pretends to be Canadian. Uh,
Yeah.
it's just off.
Yeah.
Because you just don't have that cultural experience
For sure.
of that deep knowledge and understanding of living in that island society is like. Um, and we've got experts now. We've got kids with PhDs. Kids, when I say kids, I mean like people in their 30s and 40s.
Yes.
But we have our own experts
Yeah.
who can help guide this work, who can do it in a way that our people will respond to it.
Yeah. And does this require funding for people
Of
to be able to
course,
do that? And where,
of course.
so is this like,
Yeah,
it's a call on like foundations who want this data,
yeah.
who are
It's a
invested
little
in
bit
this
of
type?
some of it's like we see what the government is doing, and it's in a couple of years we're going to need the government to go back. Hopefully, the data survives.
Hmm.
But philanthropy doesn't have enough money to replace the
Yeah.
government. But so we need to offer them some nuggets of ideas
Hmm.
of things that they can study, things that they can fund that will deliver some understanding of what's
Right.
happening.
Yeah.
But again, like I do think that this has global significance because
Absolutely.
it's very rare that an area of 1 million square kilometers that was closed to fishing suddenly gets fished.
Yeah.
Like this, we
Yeah.
need that data,
We need that.
and
Yeah.
it could confirm everything that we've been saying for 20 years, or it could throw it out the window.
This could fund probably about 17 PhDs.
Yeah.
Not, and then not, that's not even including master's students. Like definitely an opportunity right now, given the circumstances, to be able to, bring this together and at least learn from it, and see what the ramifications are going to be in the future, and what the ramifications have been in the past with this 10 years of closing off like a 50 to 200 nautical mile area, around these wonderful islands. And I think that's a really important thing to do. What's the you've mentioned it a couple times. You think that it's probably going to open up again? Like, why would it open up again?
I think the Trump administration wants to. I think they want to give industry a green light, and they tried to break the law, but we called them on that, and we still have judges who will stand up to lawbreakers.
Yeah.
Now they're going to try to do it the legal way,
Yeah.
which was going to require a public notice, a public comment period. They'll probably get buried in comments,
Yeah.
so that'll take them weeks and months, years, to go through, and then they'll put something out. And if there's a misstep, somebody will sue them.
Yeah. They're gonna
And
have to be very
it's
careful because people are watching.
people are watching, people are fighting. This is unpopular. This is
Yeah.
deeply unpopular.
Yeah.
Americans love our public lands and waters,
Yeah.
and we understand why we have protected areas.
Do you think there's a possibility to delay this process with the comments and everything like that, and burying them under those comments where they have to address them to the point where it gets close to the end of this administration's time?
That's the hope. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's uh, the Trump administration was talking about flooding the zone.
Hmm.
Steve Bannon is like, they're just throwing everything
Hmm.
all at once.
Yeah. See what
So,
sticks.
so see what sticks. And we're fighting this. We're fighting deep sea mining in America and Samoa.
Hmm.
We might be fighting openings up of other protected areas on land and on waters,
Hmm.
all while the National Guard is patrolling our metro stops, and while ICE is picking up immigrants.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's a lot going on. A lot to be
It's a lot.
distracted. Like, it's easy to be distracted by different
It's
priorities depending on where you're from,
yeah.
what your family's like, and relatives and everything like that, right? It's
We live in
interesting,
interesting times.
very interesting times. Yeah, yeah. So, well, Angela, I appreciate you coming on. I know this
Thanks,
was
amigo.
it's important for the both of us to get this out there. I definitely agree with you that we need to science the shit out of this and hopefully get get some answers and to see what's coming, and for everybody, we'll follow this story, and for everybody's listening to the audience, we'll make sure that we'll tell you when the public comment is open, and then do your thing. If you want this MPA to be an MPA and stay an MPA, give us the reasons, and give it to them, and just do what we can do, and follow the law. And that's what we're going to do. So, Angela, I appreciate you coming on the podcast and letting us know
Thanks,
about
man.
this. Thank you, Angelo, for joining us on today's episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. It was great to have you on. Such an important issue that we need to talk about. The fact is, no matter what we think of policies that are put in place by governments in power or the parties that are in power of these governments, science needs to happen. This is an opportunity to find out, one, how this monument has actually benefited, if it has benefited, the fish that were protected from fishing over the last 10 years. And two, what has this done for the fishery that's now open, and how has it benefited socioeconomically to the people who depend on these fish to sell? As Angela said during the interview, the people in the island communities look at it as like, if there's fish out there, if the ocean is healthy, then I have a fish on my plate. That's how they look at the health of the ocean. And so that's something that could be measured. That's something that could look at if they're able to sell fish, they're able to benefit economically and socially. There's a lot of things that can go in. There's a lot of collaborations that can happen. We need money and funding to do that kind of stuff. We're in a position where we have an opportunity to look at the science of these big pictures. And when you take away 1 million square miles from 1.3 million square miles of protection, you're looking at a big area, and this is something that has been unprecedented, as Angela has mentioned. So being able to monitor this, being able to see the effects, the benefits that potentially this marine protector has provided, and seeing how that would do opening it up to the fishery, or even if it's over the last 3 or 4 months, and maybe even later on, that's something that we need to measure. That's something that we need to find out what the benefits are, so that we can show the benefits of that, if there are benefits. So we're going to find out, hopefully, through science. But when the public comment period comes out for opening up the marine sanctuary again, we'll definitely let you know. We'll be following this story, because we are going to need everybody to mention why it's so important to keep this closed. So that's going to be something that's very important, and I hope that you can help us with that. If you have any questions or comments on this episode or this topic, please put them in the comments below if you're watching this on YouTube, or you can get a hold of me by going to Instagram, DMing me. Go to @HowToProtectTheOcean, or you can go to speakupforblue.com/contact, and you can contact me. It goes right to my personal email. I'd love to hear from you about this subject and what you think of it all. Politics aside, I get that it's a tough time in the US. Let's look at the fact that science can help understand what's happened and the benefits or non-benefits of a marine protected area in this area, and especially opening up to the fisheries. Will it benefit? How long will it benefit? What could be the consequences of opening this up too quickly, or opening letting up at all. So that's what I want to really focus on. I want to kind of keep the politics aside, to be honest, because I just think that people are just going to get distracted. It's a tough time in the US, it's a tough time worldwide, but this is something that we need to do as scientists. We need to science the hell out of this, and that's something that's really important. So I want to thank you for listening to this episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I want to thank Angelo for coming on and bringing this to our attention, and thank you for listening. This is something that is really important to me, to get ocean literacy out there and to make sure that we understand what's happening in the ocean and understanding the complexities that happen, as Angelo highlighted. But I want to thank you again for listening. This has been another exciting episode of the How to Protect the Ocean podcast. I'm your host, Angelo, and from the True North, Strong and Free. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next time, and happy conservation.